60 millimetres of rain in places, along with strong winds. Brighter skies follow for Northern Ireland, parts of Wales and the southwest, but further showers quickly following the weather front, and those showers will be lively across parts of southwest England in particular, along with a gusty breeze. Now, with those showers coming in from the southwest and the rain clearing the northeast, there will be some gaps in the cloud overnight, so it's a colder night for many, with temperatures dipping into the low single figures in some sheltered spots, mid to high single figures more widely. But a bright start to the day for Wednesday for many, some fog early on for Northern Ireland, that clears away. Northern Ireland seeing another lovely day on Wednesday, I think, but for many it's just a day of sunny spells and showers, those showers especially prevalent across western and southern UK. Thursday brings a further spell of wind and rain across the country, followed by further showers.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Tonight on Farage, the final bill this year is £63 million we will give to the French to try to stop the boats crossing the English Channel. Will it work? Will it hell? Is what I think, but we'll get your opinions on that and debate it. FTX, the crypto exchange that collapsed over the weekend. Investors owed huge sums of money. The financial press full of a story, no mention that he's one of the biggest funders of Joe Biden's midterm campaign. We'll ask why. And joining me on the King's 74th birthday, Grant Harold, his former butler for many, many years. We'll find out, how does Charles like to spend his birthday? But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, as you've been hearing, the UK will pay France an extra £8 million this year to help stop illegal migrants crossing the English Channel. The total number who've made the journey so far this year has reached 42,000. And a warning, the following pictures contain some flash photography. Well, the UK has agreed to pay France £63 million this year. That's up from £55 million last year. The Home Secretary agreed on a 40% boost in beach patrols, as well as British staff working in French border control rooms, dog detection teams and drones. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, said solving the crisis is one of his top priorities.
I'm confident that we can get the numbers down, but I also want to be honest with people that it isn't a single thing that will magically solve this. We can't do it overnight, but people should be absolutely reassured that this is a top priority for me. I'm gripping it. And as I've said, in the time that I've been Prime Minister, you're already starting to see some progress with this deal with the French. But that's just a start. There's lots more that we need to do.
Well, Rishi Sunak is at the G20 summit in Indonesia, where he was speaking there. And he's also going to be urging world leaders to work together to fix global economic instabilities when he addresses the summit. As he arrived in Bali, Rishi Sunak said Thursday's autumn budget will put the UK's public finances on a sustainable trajectory, while the Chancellor warned taxpayers will need to pay more to balance the books. Ukraine's president has said the recapture of the eastern city of Kherson is the beginning of the end of its war with Russia. Volodymyr Zelensky was speaking to troops on a visit to the city just days after Russian forces retreated after months of occupation. He's accused Moscow of committing more than 400 war crimes in the wider Kherson region. In Scotland, the Scottish Child Payment has now been extended to all eligible children under the age of 16. It was initially only given to families with under 6-year-olds. Poverty campaigners have described the move as a watershed moment, as around 400,000 children in Scotland will now be eligible. And lastly, gun salutes have been fired across London to mark His Majesty King Charles's 74th birthday. Well as those celebrations, Buckingham Palace also released a new image of the King. He's pictured leaning against an oak tree as he replaces his father as Ranger of Windsor Great Park, a position that dates back more than 4 centuries. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Back to Farage.
Good evening. Well, there we are. Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, across in Paris, meeting her counterpart, Gérard Darmanin. A deal done, a signing ceremony, and relations now with the French are better than they've been for some years. That at least is what Braverman thinks and what the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, thinks too. And to some extent, I suppose it's good that we're talking. But is a deal that for 2022 hands over £63 million to the French, meaning more officers there on the beaches, meaning some British officials in ops rooms in northern France. Is it really going to make any difference? Well, have a little think about the history of this. In 2018, we gave them £45 million. In 2019, we gave them £3 million. In 2020, we gave them £54 million. In 2021, we gave them £55 million. And in 2022, it's £63 million. Who's to say what the number will be next year? It seems to me the more money we send to France, the more migrants that cross the English Channel. It isn't going to work, in my opinion. But over the course of the last 3 days, another 2,000 plus young men have crossed the English Channel and been taken in to the reception centre at Dover and on to Manston. Then they get spread around the hotels around the country. Now over 300 hotels have filled up around the country. Remember, we did the story about the Camelot Castle Hotel in Cornwall the other week, who refused to take the contract, but 6 other hotels in Cornwall, some of them in the prettiest seaside resorts, have simply given in and taken the cash. But the more sinister side of this that is developing is it's becoming clear that many of the Albanian young men who come answering TikTok videos saying, come here and make fortunes in the drugs trade, don't want to get caught. Indeed, they're absconding from hotels at a rapid rate. And some footage taken this morning of one of those boats coming in to St Margaret's in Kent. And for those of you watching this on television, you'll be able to see as this boat hits the beach, there are about 10, it looks like 10 to me, men that get out, run up the shingle, and, you know, they're very graphic pictures. Now, how is it these boats are getting all the way across the channel and not being detected? It's because this boat was landing at 7 a.m., pretty much landing at first light. And interestingly, 3 on that boat were rounded up. The other 7 or 8, I don't know the exact number, are missing. They're gone. I'm told they were whisked away in cars. And that increasingly is what we will see. We will see people coming, landing at night, landing early in the morning and disappearing. Just giving more money to the French doesn't get round the problem. I've said it to you 100 times before. There's a 70-mile stretch of French coast from which these beaches are taking off. There are hundreds of miles, square miles, of sand dunes where people can hide in northern France. They're coming because of pull factors. The only thing that will work is for every single young Albanian male who crosses the English Channel on one of those boats to be sent straight back to Albania. That deals with the Albanian problem, which at the moment are the majority of those coming. You tell me, though, will this policy work? Farage at gbnews.uk. Will it work? Will it hell, in my opinion? Yet more false promises coming from a British government. Now, the knock-on effect of this to hotels and communities all over the country is being felt very, very keenly. Mark White, our Home Affairs and Security Editor, was in Maidenhead, Berkshire, today.
Well, this hotel in Maidenhead, the Holiday Inn, has been off limits to the wider public for more than 6 months, requisitioned on behalf of the Home Office to house hundreds of asylum seekers. And there's no doubt it's having an impact on the community here. One or two people said they didn't have a problem with those who are currently staying here, but the vast majority of people that stopped and spoke to us today said they were deeply concerned that it was indeed having a real impact. One man, Barry Thomas, he didn't want to speak on camera because he said he wouldn't be able to stop himself from swearing, but he described some of the people here as feral. He talked about gangs of 15 to 20 people going round local shops and just lifting goods. There was nothing, he said, that those in the shops could do about it, and he said the local police weren't helping. And I spoke to another man, a taxi driver, Douglas Watts, who backed up to an extent what we were hearing from Barry Thomas.
There's many concerns. The people get very intimidated when they use the cash machine at the garage because they feel that people were looking over their shoulders. There has been large amount of pilfering from the garage as well. I think that's sort of stopped a little bit now. But nothing against these guys, like me, but they can just wander around and do as they want. So it's a massive problem. Bicycles got theft. There's been quite a lot of pilfering. So I mean, yeah.
Well, of course, the more small boats that keep coming across the English Channel, the more pressure there'll be on communities like Maidenhead and, of course, others right across the country where hundreds of hotels have now been requisitioned by the Home Office. And GB News can reveal that after more than 1,800 people crossed the English Channel on Saturday and Sunday, more than 300 have again crossed today. That takes the total who've made this journey since the 1st of January to more than 42,000. Well, Suella Braverman will be hoping that her deal with her French counterpart will be able to make some difference. But of course, we've heard this before from the likes of Priti Patel, who gave millions of pounds to the French authorities to try to combat the trade in people coming across the Channel. At the weekend there, our cameras captured clashes between the French authorities and those migrants trying to get to the beaches near Dunkirk. We can expect more of that in the coming weeks as we're expecting about 100 additional police officers into that area to bolster those French police patrols. But the truth of it is, even if they're stopped one day, they'll just come back and try again the next.
Well, that was Mark White's report there from Maidenhead. Now, we contacted the Home Office earlier about the 7 or 8 men that disappeared off that beach at St Margaret's earlier on today. They said they don't comment on individual circumstances, but they say the global migration crisis is causing an unprecedented strain on our asylum processes. No one should put their lives at risk. Oh, it isn't really worth the bother. Frankly, it isn't worth the bother. It's the same drivel that we get every single time. And the problem gets worse, not better. And goodness me, did you see those scenes? Those scenes on Westminster Bridge, in Parliament Square on Saturday, Remembrance Weekend, families, veterans, widows coming up to London to pay their respects, to be met by a large group of Albanians protesting against the Home Secretary's words and defacing Winston Churchill's statue with an Albanian flag. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about illegal and indeed legal immigration on a scale that it is completely changing this country. You know, of all the weekends to go and protest in Parliament Square, Remembrance Weekend would have been, I would have thought, just about the least appropriate. Now, joining me, an expert on this subject, someone who saw it himself in government in Australia not that many years ago. He is Alexander Downer, former advisor to this government on immigration and, of course, former Australian Foreign Minister. Now, I know you've been doing your absolute best to encourage this government over the course of the last few years to get tough, and you've helped work with them on Rwanda, etc. But just giving France a further 63 million quid, it doesn't solve anything, does it?
Well, it might stop a percentage of these people coming, but to stop them coming altogether, you have to destroy the business model of the people smugglers, and that is that they have to be reminded that if people pay them whatever it is, 5,000 euros, that they won't be able to get those people to England. And at the moment they can. And not only can they get them to England, but these people can then claim asylum, and they're tutored to make particular types of claims.
Game the system.
Game the system. That's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
They game the system. And because of the way the laws are written in the UK, they get to stay. So something like 70% of applications for asylum in the UK are accepted by the government, whereas the EU average is about 35%.
Yeah.
That reflects the differences in the law. So there are several things they need to do. One is they need to change the laws. And they've talked about that, but they need to get the legislation through.
So let's just be
Parliament.
clear on this. We're dealing with the Modern Slavery Act, another one of Mrs May's poison pills, where people who come across in dinghies making the Albanian gang symbol, but then claim they've been trafficked into the country.
Yeah, they claim the gangs that they have paid. They have paid the gangs to bring them to the UK.
I mean,
they claim that they are now victims of modern slavery. I know, honestly, I hate to say it because politicians are loath to do so, but it's an absolute racket, the whole thing. It is a racket. These are not people who are escaping persecution within the meaning of the 1951 Refugee Convention. They are people who are gaming the system to get into the UK illegally. It's as simple as that.
No, absolutely. We've got that. We've got the Human Rights Act, 1998, which, of course, incorporated ECHR into British law. Here's my worry. Even if we change British parliamentary acts, our judges will always defer to what the ECHR have to say. Isn't the truth of it to really get to the heart of it? I mean, don't forget, you know, with the Rwanda policy that you worked on, it was a judge in Strasbourg in the end who stopped. Well, you know, that's what happened.
Stopped it so far.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, shouldn't we really be addressing that bigger issue of ECHR?
Yes, and so Dominic Raab is the Justice Secretary before in his first iteration, and now is talking about a Bill of Rights, which would clarify that UK courts had precedence over judgments of the European Court of Human Rights. Whether that would work...
But we've signed a treaty. We've signed an international treaty which would supersede.
So the ultimate thing to do, which I think would be very brave, would be to withdraw altogether from the convention. And there should be some debate about that, about whether that is the only alternative. It's a reasonable thing for the British government to say it will stop these criminal gangs from gaming the immigration system and destroying Britain's immigration policy. It is a reasonable thing to say they must be able to do that. Therefore, the solutions have to be permissible. Otherwise, in the end, maybe you do have to withdraw from the convention. That would be very regrettable, of course. It would send a bad message about human rights, but it would be...
Well,
it would solve the problem.
I don't know. This was dreamt up in the 1940s in a very different world. And hey, I don't think this country needs to be lectured by anybody in Europe on, frankly, human rights, liberty, freedom, or providing genuine refugee status. You solved this problem in Australia back in 2012. You, Tony Abbott, the Prime Minister, you did it. Quick last thought. You've worked closely with our government here on this at the highest level. Do they realise how much trouble they're in with the electorate?
I think they I think they think it is one of their problems. Wow. And I have often, yes, I think that's how they look at it. My view is, and speaking from Australian experience, this could turn out to be a huge plus for the government if they were decisive and they stopped this trafficking of people into the UK. I think it would be a real political winner, because you can be sure that the Labour Party, the Lib Dems, the SNP would oppose any measures the government took. So it has the potential to be politically very helpful to them, but they're not going to achieve it if they keep allowing people to come into the country illegally.
Well said, Alexander Downer. And they're not going to do it because they haven't got the guts. And very telling, isn't it, that somebody advising senior government figures, they think it's just one of their problems. No, it's the biggest one they face all over this country, believe you me. In a moment, we'll look at the collapse of FTX. This man who was held up to be the new Warren Buffett. But what no one, the BBC or no one in Britain is reporting, he just gave $40 million to Joe Biden's midterm campaign and said he might give $1 billion for the 24 campaign. Why? The conspiracy of silence.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
So what are your thoughts? Will giving the French another £63 million this year slow the number of people crossing the English Channel? One viewer says, nope, the only thing that will work is convincing the paying customers of the criminal gangs that they will never land in England. I'm going to disagree with that. It's not about landing in England. It's about once you've got to England through this route, being sent back. They wouldn't pay the traffickers then now, would they? Phil says, no, it won't. Nick says, the French are taking the proverbial again. Nothing new. It's so easy to blame the French. Why do you think we're not staying in France? Because here, you get a 4-star hotel, 3 meals a day, a dentist, a doctor, 38 quid a week spending money, and a chance in your spare time to work in the illegal drugs trade. Can you see why they're coming here? It's our fault. We're the draw. We really, really are. And finally, another viewer says, of course it won't solve it. The only answer is to repeal the Human Rights Act and leave the ECHR, to which I would say, actually, if we did that, that would be completing Brexit, a proper Brexit, which is what I would like to see. Now, a few weeks ago, we went to Amsterdam and covered the Bitcoin conference for this programme. I know many of you that watch and listen to this show are interested, already hold some Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. And kind of the big message I've been getting from people is either don't understand it, don't want to know, or I'm really worried, particularly after the pandemic, that if we head towards central bank digital currencies, our lives will be completely controlled. Now, at no point on this journey have I not said to you, this is an unregulated market and a dangerous game. And there's been, I think, so far the biggest collapse in the crypto world. FTX has gone into Chapter 11 bankruptcy over the course of the weekend. But here's the interesting bit. It was led by a guy called Sam Bankman-Fried. And Forbes magazine, here he is, the front page of Forbes magazine just a few months ago, his net worth estimated at $32 billion. And hey, he's the new Warren Buffett, he's the new genius, he is the new guru. But it's all gone wrong. And if you believe some of the stories in the newspapers, it would appear that depositors' money in FTX was taken out of that and used for trading in other markets. If anything like that's true, there'll be a knock at his door and a finger on his collar very, very quickly. Well, joining me from Wall Street, visiting London, Jason Trennert, CEO of Strategas, and you're a Wall Street broker and analyst. Jason, welcome to London. This is quite a big collapse in the crypto world, isn't it?
It is. I think it's the biggest one we've seen since really crypto came on the scene, and we don't quite know all of the ramifications of the crypto world at large, but it seems to be rather large, and it will be shocking to me if there is not regulation that comes out of this. As a result.
When I was at the crypto conference, actually, the reputable traders in crypto were all saying to me, we want regulation. Sure. We want a sensible level of market regulation, which hasn't perhaps yet happened. But here's the thing. We very often I sit here and criticise the other mainstream media for not talking about the cross-channel illegal trade, whatever it is. I've been looking through the financial press, and I've been looking through the BBC and elsewhere. They've told me all about this guy, Sam Bankman-Fried. I mean, a bit of a weirdo, but then in that world, it's kind of not
hard to believe he got money from private equity, but he did.
Well, he did, and of course, he was bigged up in America as being, the new Warren Buffett. But how is it that I can read in all these articles about the fact that he slept on a mat on the floor in the office? I can read about the game he played on computers incessantly. Nowhere have I read that he gave $40 million to the Democrats. What's going on?
I'm not sure. It might be because he gave $300,000 to Republicans and $40 million to Democrats. So perhaps the mainstream media thinks that means that he's playing both sides. But clearly, I think he is there's no question in my mind that in an odd way, cryptocurrency, or at least the people that are in charge of a lot of these cryptocurrency exchanges and firms, are part of big tech, if you will, which is very much siding with Democrats and Facebook and liberals. There's
massive donations.
It's not even close. The dollars are 95 to 1 when it comes to the employees of Facebook. Twitter, all the rest, it is extremely one-sided. Now, of course, people understand the game. I went to college in Washington, D.C., and when I was there many years ago, 35 years ago, it was a quaint town. Now it's one of the wealthiest cities in the United States. 9 of the 20 wealthiest counties in the entire United States surround Washington, D.C. And why is that? It's because every Fortune 500 company, every accountant, every consultant has an office there because they understand that maneuvering the levers of Washington gives them huge opportunities for business.
The lobbying.
And we have a lobbying index in our shop that plays that.
It's massive.
That's massive.
But why do we not get the truth about this guy? Because he also said he might give up to $1 billion to the 2024 presidential campaign for the Democrats.
Well, listen, I think I would argue I was saying to my wife the other day, I'm amazed that Bill Clinton almost has no shame that he's on the same stage with Tony Blair, I might add.
Yes.
With Sam Bankman-Fried, a kid who's 30 years old, is completely untested, and yet everyone, and they're sitting there, and Bill Clinton is sitting there in his tennis shoes and his suit, and he's taking this person seriously. And you're wondering, of all the things you could be doing with that power and that influence, you're spending your time largely with people that can line your pockets. It's sad, but predictable.
It's unbelievable. Well, it seems to me that if those people who put money with FTX lose that money, maybe the Democrats could give some money back.
But perhaps they can.
Perhaps they can. Now, I'm very interested, Jason. You know, as an analyst, a writer, broadcaster, you've written a paper, some perspectives on fossil fuels. The Green New Deal, which is being sold by Joe Biden as the future, and we have very similar things happening here with our net zero commitments, and Boris, when he was Prime Minister, you know, all electric cars by the mid-2030s, etc. Wind energy, we're going to be the Saudi Arabia of wind. You don't think the Green New Deal is all it's cracked up to be, do you?
Not at all. I think it's partly because I was on an investment committee for one of the first foundations in the United States that went fossil fuel free. It was ironic given the family that was funding that foundation. But as a middle class bloke, to me, I can't think of anything that's benefited mankind more than fossil fuels. I would say in terms of standard of living, it would be hard to come up with anything. And I would say that's technological innovation as well. Fracking is technological innovation. Having said that, if you look at the materials that make up an electric vehicle, as an example, there is nothing green about them. They require an electric vehicle requires 4 times as much copper as an internal combustion engine vehicle. Requires more lithium, manganese, cobalt. If you look at the ways these things are mined, there is nothing green about them. The cars also are far heavier. The wear and tear on the roads, the wear and tear on just the public services are far greater. So for some reason, we've convinced ourselves, or a group of businessmen and businesswomen have convinced politicians that this is the way out, this is somehow greener. But as they say in the United States, it's only greener perhaps at the tailpipe. All of the things you have to do to produce this car.
There's a lot to think about. And a final thought. Jason, I was over in Arizona, New York and Arizona last week and broadcasting. And, you know, how is it that the richest, strongest, most technologically innovative, most powerful country in the world, it's now nearly a week since the midterms, we still don't know who the governor of Arizona is. We still don't know for certain who's got a majority in the House. What the hell is happening in American politics?
For some unknown reason, or perhaps it's known, I think liberals have convinced Americans that they were somehow being disenfranchised, and as a result, they changed the laws. And they changed the laws in a way, clearly, that benefited Democrats. And so while something that would very rarely happen in the past, which is to say not finding out what the results of an election would be before you went to bed, is happening on a regular basis. And of course, whether the results are accurate or not, it's increasing the level of suspicion on the entire system at a time in which we need more confidence in the system.
Honestly, I'm not saying it is corrupt, but it looks it.
Certainly, if you lose, it looks corrupt. That's oftentimes the people who lose are Republicans when these recounts are made.
It's horrible. Jason Trenner, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
And remember, we have democracy, so we don't fight each other. We have democracy, so we don't turn to violence. That's why trusting the system, not necessarily liking the result, but trusting the system matters so much. In a moment, we're going to talk about the World Cup football and why that legend in this country, Sir Geoff Hurst, is going to be joining us this week.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel. Renewable energy. Yes, we're being told it's wonderful. The Green New Deal in America, as we just discussed, electric cars. It's all fabulous. But renewable energy, the Saudi Arabia of wind and, of course, solar to play its part. Well, what the Farage moment for me over the weekend was learning that Toucan Energy Holdings, who were building solar farms all over Essex on what many would say is land that could be producing food, but nonetheless, they had been funding it all by borrowing money from the council in Thurrock. In fact, in total, 655 million is what they borrowed from the council in Thurrock. In return, the council got a good rate of interest on the money, but now Toucan Energy have gone bust. And the £655 million of taxpayers' money has simply disappeared. I say it again and again and again, be very sceptical about renewable energy. Much of it is a scam. Good news over the weekend. Yes, wonderful news. It was the T20 World Cup final yesterday. England v Pakistan. And in what was a tight game for much of it, Ben Stokes, the great Ben Stokes, leading us to a fantastic victory and celebrations. So England at the moment are the world champions at 50 over cricket, and now the world champions at 20 over cricket too, which I think is absolutely terrific. And Stokes, just an extraordinary man, a man who was a hero. He went to zero when he was caught in a drunken brawl and finished up in court and was really in very, very serious trouble. And now absolutely back as our captain of our test team to being a proper hero. A boy's own swashbuckler in the mould of Ian Botham. Now, sticking with the theme of football. The World Cup in Qatar starts next week. England have got a line-up over the next couple of weeks. We'll be playing Iran. We'll be playing Friday week against the USA. We'll be playing the Welsh on the 29th. So the World Cup football, of course, it comes around every 4 years. It is a massive, massive event. This year, of course, it's being held in Qatar for reasons known only to FIFA, who sometimes perhaps give the impression, or have in the past, of being more corrupt than the European Union. There are, of course, human rights stories, much to debate. We are doing a Farage at Large special this Friday ahead of the World Cup. It'll be held in the Wembley area. And if you want to come along, we want genuine football fans. And I'm thrilled to say that Sir Geoff Hurst will be there with us on that evening. If you want to come along, meet and listen to Sir Geoff Hurst talk about what's coming up in Qatar, what the threats, what the challenges are, gbnews.uk. But we do want real, genuine football fans. In a moment, on the King's 74th birthday, I'll be joined by Grant Harold, his former butler, for Talking Pints. Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, Talking Pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
On radio.
and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Steyn. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
It's that time of the day. Yes, it's time for Talking Pints. My guest today, well, Grant Harold was butler to what we now know, of course, as King Charles III. Grant, welcome to Talking Pints.
Cheers.
Good to see you. And, well, happy birthday to the King.
Happy birthday to the King, absolutely.
So Charles, 74 years young today. But I wanted to go back a step with you about how you became, you know, the butler for Charles and Camilla. Because you basically, I mean, it was almost like a TV audition in your case, wasn't it?
It was. Well, originally I watched a documentary about the Queen and the family, and I thought, wouldn't it be amazing to work for the family? I wrote to the Queen twice, still got the responses, and this determination continued until my early 20s when I heard that he was looking for a butler, and so I applied for the job. And what was interesting was the now Queen, or Queen Consort, knew me from a reality show that I did when I was about 21 called Country House, which was where I was a trainee butler. And so initially, when I joined the household, they used to introduce me as the TV butler, which was quite embarrassing, but also quite funny.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? I mean, you know, because obviously one of the qualities they're looking for is discretion,
yes,
etc. So to get somebody who'd been on a reality show, they were taking a bit of a gamble, weren't they?
Possibly. I think, luckily, obviously, they watched it, saw what I was like. And, I mean, they did say when I joined the household that, obviously, from that point forward, you don't do any media work, you don't do any television. And that's how it is, you know, when you're there. I think there's only a few images of me when I was working for the family because, you know, you wouldn't go up and say, oh, can I have a picture? Or could you imagine today? Or can we do a quick TikTok or something?
Yeah.
It just wouldn't happen.
And when you first got the job, you were slightly overawed by it?
I was, yes. I was very nervous. I didn't know what the protocols were. And, you know, a lot of people think that we get given manuals and you're told what to do. You're not. You kind of go in, you learn from the other staff. I remember the first time I kind of came face to face with the now King and Queen was in Scotland, and I didn't know what to do. I remember one morning they appeared at the end of this corridor and I panicked. Didn't know if I'm supposed to bow, do you speak to them? And there was a door on my right, and I dived into this what I thought was a room, and it was a cupboard, which is a little bit awkward, and I thought they won't know I'm in a cupboard, they'll never know, and they were outside the door wondering why I was inside a cupboard.
What did you say?
Well, I calmly, because I could hear them having this conversation about what I was doing, so I thought, well, I better get this situation. So I opened the door, didn't look at them, and there was a door opposite, and I was praying that it wasn't another cupboard, and luckily it was a staircase, and at which point, as I closed the door, I acknowledged them, obviously, because they're there, and said, you know, good morning, your Royal Highnesses, and they both kind of smiled at me, and then I went, that's the staircase, and then went down the stairs, and later on, they were in hysterics about it, but it was great for me, because I got to see that they were fun. You know, they were down to earth, great humour, which now people get to see, thanks to obviously YouTube. You get to see this kind of humorous side of them.
Yeah, it was, and of course that relationship of staff, you know, in any walk of life, but especially with what you were doing. I thought one of the most moving moments that I saw on the day of the Queen's funeral were all the staff walking out of Buckingham Palace and lining up as the car. It was a very, very powerful moment, wasn't it?
It was. Weirdly, I was nearby. I was literally just to the side of the palace when that happened, and I didn't realise that they were all coming out, and I was there because I hadn't had a chance to kind of say my goodbye, and luckily, I don't quite know how it happened, Nigel, but somehow I ended up in the right spot at the right time as the coffin went past, and got to kind of say my goodbye, because obviously part of working for the family was my dream of meeting the Queen and even getting to dance with her, because that was the other thing that I wanted to do, was to have the honour of hopefully dancing with her, and that happened. And the sad part was the room that I got to dance with her, which was this ambition, was obviously where at Balmoral Castle where they put her body after she had died, you know, which was,
strange.
For me, that was really moving.
Odd.
Yeah, really odd.
Yeah, and Charles himself, I mean, you of course worked a lot of time at Highgrove.
Yes.
So Highgrove is where it's the private.
Yes.
It's the private Charles and Camilla. Now, there was a lovely picture the other day of Camilla with two dogs.
Yes.
And a sort of furry hat on, and she was going out to walk the dogs. And we get the odd sort of birthday picture of Charles at Highgrove. But this, I mean, for him, this really is home, is it?
It is. In fact, last year, I think the picture that was shown was actually at Highgrove, and it said in his kind of beloved gardens, the birthday picture. And it's somewhere that he really loves Highgrove. You know, that's why I was so lucky to be based there, because, you know, it wasn't an office, it was a private home, you know, very much a private home. And I felt really lucky to be able to kind of be there. And I mean, I knew of Highgrove, obviously, as everybody that kind of likes the royal family knows about the private homes, and that was obviously a private home. And I got to obviously not only look after them, but back then the boys, William and Harry. And it was extraordinary having the opportunity of getting to know them as a family, just like any other family. The thing that actually hit me, I remember being in London on one occasion, staying over at Clarence House, and I remember carrying on as normal, you know, around them as we used to do, and looking out the window about 9 o'clock as they were leaving to do some official, and there was obviously there was the official cars and the escort, and that's when I was like, wow, this isn't just any family, because you kind of forget, because when you're around them, they do become. And
they were kids and
exactly,
fun and playing.
Exactly.
And, yeah. No, it was Charles himself. I mean, we get all sorts of, you know, conflicting opinions about Charles, about how complex he is, about how emotional he is. Well, clearly he is an emotional man. Clearly he does care about stuff a lot.
He does, and that's what I noticed also from an official point of view. Obviously he gets, you know, this is where over the years people kind of criticise him for getting involved too much, but he's not, from what I could understand, what I saw, he's not doing it on purpose. It's just he's passionate.
He cares about stuff.
He cares about the country, he cares about people. And that's why he gets involved, and even right down to his staff. You know, he cares about his staff. It was reported the other day that he's, with the cost of living, he's been giving some money to staff, and that didn't surprise me, because I'm aware that's the kind of man he is. You know, he would always, if there was ever a problem or something wrong, he would want to know. He would ask you, and it used to kind of catch me off guard. You know, he'd be in the middle of doing lunch or dinner, and he might have heard something, and he would ask you. He would say, "Is everything okay?" And because he wanted everybody to be happy, he wanted everything. So this was how he is. This is how he is as a person.
A bit odd, perhaps.
Initially, I was surprised, you know, from my point of view, because I didn't expect it to be like that. I kind of thought working for this family that it would be you wouldn't have that kind of interaction, and that was very much part of it.
But you were at Highgrove. I mean, of course, you know, you were in his private space.
Yes.
So it's a close relationship that develops.
It is. Yes. I mean, I've said this to many people over the years, that when you work for anybody as a butler or in a household, it is a private, you know, private home, and you get to know them, dare I say, probably better than other members of the family. But they trust you and respect you, and it's a two-way thing. It's very much a two-way thing. I remember one of the biggest honours I also had when working for him was he's got, for anybody that's been to Highgrove, there's the Sanctuary, which is a little place of worship in the grounds. All faiths can actually go there, and I used to kind of help look after it, and it was a huge honour when he asked if I would look after this, kind of care for it and keep it in order. So nice. I felt really lucky.
So the religious side, and mixing drinks for Camilla, of course.
Exactly, yes, absolutely. I should mention, she's also very good at making cups of tea. You know, she'd do. That's the wonderful thing about them. And the Queen was the same. You know, they would do things as well. You know, they can, you know, quite easily make cups of tea for people and do things themselves. And that's what was always quite nice, was kind of seeing that they've got staff and people there to help them.
Of course.
But the reality is, of course they can do things
But they
themselves.
look happy together, don't they?
Totally. 100%. They are the best of friends. I mean, that's what I remember. I was lucky. I got invited to the wedding. I hadn't been there long enough. I had been there, I think it was about 9 months. And then I got an invitation. I actually got a phone call from Clarence House, from a member of his team, to say that I hadn't been there long enough, but I was invited personally by them to the wedding. And that was amazing, you know, to
nice
be at the wedding. It was wonderful. Windsor Castle, it was a beautiful day.
Brilliant.
The Queen was there, Prince Philip was there. It was extraordinary.
He's the king now, and he's had the longest apprenticeship of anybody I can think of in any walk of life. It's still a shock to me that it's only 8 weeks ago the Queen died.
I know.
Or the funeral was. It seems difficult to believe. It seems much longer, I guess, darker evenings or whatever it is. He seems to be settling into the role. Now, today is his birthday.
Yes.
But the Queen had 2 birthdays.
Yes.
She had her birthday and the official birthday. What's going to happen with Charles, do you think?
So there's a great tradition to this. This tradition goes back to apparently Charles II, who had a royal parade, and then I believe it was in the time of George IV when it became a more annual event. And this is something that our Queen continued with. The reason it's normally in June was Edward VII. His birthday, like the now King, was in November, which is not the great time to have a parade. So it was decided for some reason to do it in June. Now, there's a lot of speculation over if it's going to continue. I'm almost positive that it will. In fact, doing a little bit of research online, I could even see that there's the dates haven't been announced yet, but it is all there. So I think that there will be a trip in the colour in June, which will be the same tradition that the Queen did.
Makes sense. And a coronation in May.
And a
lot to look forward to. Grant, thank you very much indeed for coming in.
My pleasure.
And joining us on the King's birthday. Thank you.
Thank you.
OK, back with you. It's Farage, the Farage. You've been sending in your questions. Here goes. Well, this is going to make my life very, very easy. One of our viewers asks, do the royals ever have a takeaway or other fast food? It's sort of Mackie D's turn up at Highgrove. I don't think so.
No. Well, I will tell you one thing. I remember Prince Harry, when I started, he was very concerned about me having any food in the house, and he did actually say, would I like to have a takeaway? So that's the closest I've come to having a takeaway with a royal.
That's when Harry was a lad.
Yes, a few years ago now.
He's not anymore, is he? No, I meant lad, not in the sense of being young, but Jack the lad. He looks a bit controlled to me, but that's another debate for another time. David asks, what is these questions? What is the royal way to eat a scone? Jam on first or cream on first? Now, you're going to upset Devon or Cornwall.
No, I'm not. I'll tell you why. Because the Queen at the palace, you would be offered both. So at a garden party, you'd have the jam on top, or sometimes you'd have the cream on top.
Really?
Yeah. So they did a mixture of both.
They struck the compromise.
It was very diplomatic.
Well, we couldn't have sort of, almost sort of an insurgency, civil war going on across the River Tamar between Devon and Cornwall. John asks, why don't the government reduce overseas aid to help our finances? The answer, John, is they have actually partially reduced overseas aid, but I say, only very, very partially. Look, I'm going to be doing a story tomorrow with you, an exclusive story tomorrow with you, about the sheer amount of money the Exchequer is losing every year through the criminal trade in counterfeiting. And when you start to look at these things, you realise we do waste a huge amount of money in government. But look, the argument, look after your own, is a very powerful argument. The argument to help the third world is equally powerful if you think the money's being spent in the right way. But when foreign aid becomes poor people in rich countries giving money to rich people in poor countries, then you do have something of a problem. I've got time just about for one more. In your opinion, is the failure to get out of the EU red tape the fault of politicians or the stubborn work from home civil service? Both, to be honest with you. I don't think the Conservative Party ever really wanted Brexit. I think even for Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, it was a short-term political fix. It suited them beautifully. They didn't have the commitment to carry it through. And now we see the real nature of the Conservative Party, because we've got people like Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor. Yes, of course, the civil servants would obstruct any change, but it is disappointing 6 years on not to have taken more benefit. That's it. Over and out for me from today. In a moment, Mark Stein. First, the all-important weather.
Hello again, here's the latest weather forecast from me, Aidan McGiven. Further wind and rain during the next 24 hours, followed by sun and showers. And all in all, it is turning less mild compared with the remarkable warmth that we saw at the weekend. That warmth was carried by southerly winds, but the winds are changing direction.